Welcome to the True Assassins podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're diving into a couple of seriously intense stories from Orlando Madsbrine's True Assassins.
Okay.
We're really getting into what happens when you get that kind of ambition that twists into straight up betrayal.
Yeah.
And then also how power can just completely corrupt even the people who seem like they are, the most devoted, the most
Right.
The
holiest.
like the holiest of the holy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys always asked for those stories that really show what can happen, the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And we think these stories, The Eagle's Cry.
Oh, wow.
And Solstice of Blood,
Yeah.
they really give you a good look at that. They don't hold back.
They don't. These are about more than just the act of killing,
There you
right?
go.
These are about the breaking of those really fundamental societal bonds and those breaches, and then the brutal ways that those breaches are addressed.
And it's interesting, to look at these two very different worlds.
Right.
The Viking Age and then this more mystical Druidic society.
Right.
But you see these similar themes.
Yeah.
This treachery, the
Yeah.
abuse of authority.
Exactly. Yeah. So first, we're going to jump right into the world of the Vikings
Okay.
with the story "The Eagle's Cry,"
Oh, wow.
and this is about this guy Leif,
Oh, he?
and he decides that Saxon gold is more important than the loyalty of his brothers.
Yeah.
And so we're really going to unpack, the Viking code of honor,
Mm-hmm.
and then the price that he pays when everybody finds out what he did.
Right.
So get ready. It's pretty rough, but it's a really
It's raw.
it's a really raw look at justice in a time period that was so harsh.
Yeah, what grabs you right away in Leif's story is the motivation.
Yeah.
It's the Saxon gold.
Oh, yeah.
And the text really emphasizes the weight of those coins in his hand. And it's almost like, you can feel the temptation.
Yeah.
That promise of this easier life, away from all the raiding and the hardship.
Right. Yeah.
So it creates this conflict right away.
Yeah.
You have your own personal gain versus this bedrock of Viking society, this unwavering loyalty to your warband.
Totally. And that image of those heavy coins.
Yeah.
It's so powerful. It really makes you think about how this wasn't just some spur of the moment decision.
Yeah.
It was, he thought this out.
Yeah.
He wanted a different life. He wanted one that was, easier.
Right.
One without that struggle and
Right.
and that feeling of always being watched.
Yeah.
Like those watchful eyes that are mentioned in the story.
Right. Yeah.
But as we see, and as Leif maybe should realize, in a tight group like that,
Right.
those secrets, they have a way of coming out.
Yeah.
They come out.
It's like, the story talks about how quickly his treachery is discovered. It's
Right.
like the speed of an ill-cast net.
Yeah.
And that really says a lot, I think, about that interdependence,
Yeah.
maybe even the suspicion.
Yeah.
In an environment where you're living in such close quarters,
Right. Yeah.
all those whispers, those suspicious glances,
Yeah.
trust is what holds it all together.
Right.
And once that's broken,
Yeah.
man, those repercussions are swift and brutal.
They are swift. They waste no time.
Yeah.
And so he's not invited to some, nice little get together.
Right.
They drag him to the sacrificial stones, by the fjord.
Wow.
And it's cold and it's unforgiving.
Yeah.
And that's so important, that location.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a simple execution, right?
It's
It's like
beautiful,
this ritual. They're
Yeah.
cleansing. They're making a sacrifice.
Right.
To try to restore balance
Right.
and honor to the group.
Yeah. That setting at the sacrificial stones, it gives it this feeling of huge gravity.
Yeah.
It's not just breaking trust.
Right.
It's like, he violated something sacred
Yeah.
to their whole belief system.
Totally. Yeah.
And then the Jarl, the way
Yeah.
he looks at him, it's like chilling calculation.
Yeah.
It's not just anger. It's
Right.
like cold,
Right.
detached,
Yeah.
this is what has to be done. You have to maintain order, even if it's horrific.
But that brings us to the Blood Eagle.
Right.
And, the story is pretty clear that for something like this,
Yeah.
the Vikings had one punishment, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through, based on what the book says, can you walk us through what this ritual was?
Sure.
It's rough. But I think it's important to understand,
I think so too.
how horrible this was to them.
Yeah.
How bad what he did was in their eyes.
So the way they describe it is they start with a knife.
Yeah.
And they trace along the spine.
Oh.
And then the ribs are severed and they pull them outward. And it's like, these monstrous wings.
Yeah.
And it's all done so precisely.
Right.
It's not just about pain, it's about symbolism.
Yeah.
This very specific execution.
Right.
And then they pull the lungs out.
Oh my gosh.
And they drape them over the ribs.
No.
You can almost hear him trying to breathe,
Yeah.
Each breath is just agony.
Right.
And the story mentions, the scream is lost in the wind, the metallic taste of blood.
Right.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And then the story doesn't let up, even at the end.
Right.
It's brutal right up until the very last moment.
Yeah.
He doesn't even ask for mercy. He knows it's not going to happen.
Right.
But he asks for a quick death, and they don't give it to him.
Right. They deny him that.
Then the Jarl does this one last thing.
Yeah.
He cuts the nerves with an axe.
Wow.
And it's meant to be cruel, right? It's meant to really show how much they hated what he did.
It really highlights the contempt for his betrayal.
Yeah.
He went against the Viking code.
Yeah.
Completely. And I think the fact that they denied him a quick death
Right.
really says a lot about the punishment.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about taking his life.
Right.
It was making sure that he felt the full weight of what he'd done.
Yeah.
Cutting those nerves, I can't even imagine the pain.
And then afterwards, he's screaming.
Yeah.
His screams are echoing across the fjord.
Yeah.
The other Vikings, they turn away.
Yeah.
They had to do it, but it's so brutal that they can't even watch.
Right.
And then some of them, they take the coins, the Saxon coins, the bloodstained coins, and they throw them into the water.
Wow.
And that shows you right there that his greed, it got him nothing,
Yeah.
a horrible death.
Right.
The hate of his comrades.
Right.
And in their world, honor was so much more valuable than any amount of gold.
You got it. Throwing away those coins is like this big symbolic rejection.
Yeah.
Yeah. It means material wealth means nothing.
Right.
When you've broken that trust, when you've gone against those core values of Viking society.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to a different kind of setting.
Okay.
This is a more mystical setting, Solstice of Blood.
Okay.
And this story is about this druid, Caedmon.
Okay.
And he's supposed to be this guy who's connected to nature and the gods.
Right.
But he uses blood sacrifices to stay in power.
Okay.
And so we're going to look at, how he created this atmosphere of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And then this one act of rebellion that ends his reign.
Yeah.
And it all goes down on the summer solstice.
Oh, wow.
And this story really gets into how power can corrupt anyone.
Yeah.
Even those who are supposed to be spiritual leaders.
Right.
And, it shows the courage it takes to stand up to a tyrant like that.
Yeah. I think one of the first things that you notice is this tension between this outward show of reverence,
right,
but then this underlying dread.
Right.
The oak grove, it's vibrant, it's full of life, but then there's this heaviness to the atmosphere.
Right.
There's fear.
Yeah.
And on Solstice Eve,
yeah,
the villagers, they've got these forced smiles.
Yeah.
But then Caedmon, he's got this holy but hungry look in his eyes.
Right.
And it just tells you right away that something's wrong.
Yeah, something's not right.
Something's not right.
He's got this, this huge reputation.
Yeah.
It's like this bridge to the natural world. He's preaching balance,
Right.
The circle of life.
Right.
But he's doing these blood sacrifices.
Right.
And the story mentions, the wanderer, the unlucky one.
Yeah.
These are the people he's sacrificing.
Wow.
And it's giving him this dark power.
Yeah.
This influence.
Yeah.
And he becomes more than just a man.
Right.
The story says that.
Yeah.
So it's like he's twisted his spiritual role.
Right.
To get power.
Yeah, I think the way they use the term unlucky one,
yeah,
it's chilling because it takes away their humanity.
Right.
They died because of bad luck,
right,
not because of Caedmon.
Right.
And he's manipulating people's beliefs.
Right.
He's twisting the whole idea of sacrifice.
Right.
So he gets rid of threats.
Yeah.
And he makes himself look more powerful.
Totally.
Yeah.
But even in this place where everyone's so afraid.
Yeah.
there's this one person, Maeve,
Okay.
and she questions things.
Yeah.
She's not just going along with it.
Yep.
And the story talks about how she looks at the sacrificial dagger.
Okay.
Like she's thinking about it,
Yeah.
And that's a really important detail because it shows that she's going to play a big role in challenging Caedmon.
Mamive is so important to the story because she represents this like critical thinking.
Yeah. Right.
In a place where everyone's living in fear.
Yeah.
And even if she doesn't say anything out loud,
right,
her questions suggest that maybe
Yeah.
Caedmon's control isn't as strong as it seems.
Right.
And the way she looks at the dagger, it's like she sees it as the way to break his hold.
Right. Totally. And then during the ritual, when he's got the dagger raised, she doesn't back down. She grabs an axe and she lunges at him.
Oh my gosh.
And everyone gasps, the whole village.
Yeah.
And that's like this turning point. They go from being afraid to like rebelling.
Yeah.
And it's brave, to stand up like that.
It is.
She's the one who breaks the illusion that he's untouchable.
That is like the climax of the story,
Yeah.
that moment.
Totally.
Because she frees everyone from that fear.
Yeah.
And it's so sudden. It wasn't planned. It was just like she had to do it.
Yeah.
And the axe was stolen. So it's like, she took initiative.
Yeah, totally. And then, it's chaos after that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got dark magic.
Yeah.
The vines are trying to stop her.
Right.
But the villagers they're so angry. They're so full of rage.
Yeah.
They're finally fighting back. And the grove, this place that's supposed to be peaceful.
Right.
It's a battleground.
Wow.
And the oak tree, the sacred tree,
it's
covered in blood.
Wow.
And that shows you how much he's corrupted everything.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting, He's got magic.
Yeah.
But they have their strength.
Right.
Their numbers.
Right.
And that shows that even the biggest power can be overcome.
Right.
If people work together.
Yeah.
His magic came from their belief in him,
Right.
Once they stop believing,
he
loses power.
And then, in the middle of all this, he trips.
Oh, wow.
He falls on the altar where he's done all these sacrifices,
Right.
and the dagger is just lying there.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like almost poetic justice,
Yeah.
The thing he used to hurt others,
Right.
it might be what takes him down.
Yeah, it's like the altar where he did all those awful things. It's where it all ends for him, and the dagger's a reminder, of all the pain he caused.
And then Maeve, she's standing over him.
Yeah.
And she says, "Your sacrifice will appease the gods far more than ours ever did."
Wow.
And she stabs him.
Oh, wow.
And his scream, it's not even human.
Yeah.
It's animalistic.
Yeah.
And his power, it just goes out.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Those words are so powerful.
Yeah.
Because she turns his own logic against him.
Right.
Yeah. She takes back the meaning of sacrifice. It's like his death is what brings balance back.
Right.
And when he screams, it's like he's not special anymore.
Right.
He's just a person.
Yeah.
Facing the consequences.
And the story ends with the sun setting.
Yeah.
And it's not just the end of the day.
Right.
It's the end of his rule.
Yeah.
And the villagers they're talking about how the tyrant is gone. And the forest itself.
Yeah.
It's like it can breathe again.
Yeah.
It's this really powerful image,
Yeah.
Like the world is free now.
Yeah, it's like this return to order.
Yeah.
After it was all messed up.
And it shows us that, power that's built on lies and cruelty, that's not going to last.
It's not.
It's going to fall apart.
It's going to crumble.
So as we wrap up this murder investigation, what do you think these stories tell us about choices and power?
Yeah.
In The Eagle's Cry, you see the betrayal can cost you everything.
Yeah.
What did you think about, their code of honor?
I thought it was interesting that, their violence, it wasn't random.
Yeah.
It was all about survival,
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you betrayed them, you weren't just hurting one person, you were hurting the whole group.
Right.
And that's why the punishment was so harsh.
Yeah.
It was a deterrent.
Yeah.
Because they had to trust each other to survive.
Right. And then in Solstice of Blood, you see that, even spiritual leaders can be corrupted.
Yeah.
By power.
Yeah.
And even when everyone's afraid,
right,
someone can be brave and fight back, like Maeve.
Yeah.
What did you think about that?
It shows you that even when someone seems really powerful,
yeah,
they're not.
Right.
Because power comes from the people being ruled,
right.
you know?
Yeah.
And if they stop consenting, the power crumbles.
Right.
It highlights how important it is to be brave.
Yeah.
To challenge those in power.
And these stories, they're so different.
Yeah.
But they both show us something about human nature.
Yeah.
You know, when people are under pressure, what makes them betray?
Right.
What makes them resist?
Yeah.
Think about what makes people do these things.
Even though they're made up, these stories, they show us things that are real.
Yeah.
About how people behave.
Totally, totally. So think about the cost of power. Think about what loyalty really means.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the True Assassins podcast.
Yes.
And our murder investigation into The Eagle's Cry and Solstice of Blood from Orlando Madsbrine's True Assassins.
Great book.
Make sure to rate and follow us for more stories about murder, hitmen, and assassins.
Addictive.
Really addictive stuff.